Ark Beyond Ascension, Part 11. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey. So we started off our journey here by essentially leveling up our new bird. I took him onto the hill up above and grabbed an explorer note, and basically I decided to go through and destroy a bunch of babies so we could get him a whole bunch of experience and levels, because I wanted to go back to Carno Island to get some revenge and hopefully take out some of the alphas there, hopefully get some better gear as well, harvest up some chitin, and maybe even find a better argy. And then, as you can see, I gained just over 30 levels with all those baby argies that we managed to go through and eat with the full Explorer Note buff as well. So we are super buffed up. I enhanced the melee, our stam, and our health up to 5,000. I did not really put too many points into weight at this time. It's definitely something I do want to do later as well. But right now, I just want to worry about basically fighting so we can kill these alphas. And then once I did go through arrive on the island, the very first creature I ran into was another Alpha Carno. And yeah, the fight went pretty similar as it did last time. He actually kind of kicked my butt, but he did have a whole bunch of minions. I'm telling you, this island is covered in Ceratosauruses. There's basically nothing but them here. So after he did go through and pummel me and basically take all my health out, I kind of swooped away, took a break, and I actually was able to lure two of his guys over here because they were still aggroed. And I went through and I took both of them out, which meant that this fight should hopefully get easier once I have fully healed back up. But yeah, there's no way I could take on the Alpha Carno with these guys. They're actually the ones that deal all the damage because they have that huge alpha buff. So then basically what I decided to do after that, realizing I couldn't take him down right away because I was super low on health and then he had all of his friends, is I went around the island looking for anything else that was not a Ceratosaurus or there was not an alpha, so argies, raptors, scorpions, anything that was significantly easier to kill, as I was doing just over 200 damage. And I basically was just harvesting their corpses up so I could go through and heal from all of them, so I can basically get back in prime shape before I can attempt that fight again. But then I stumbled upon a level 140 argy, and I was tempted not to kill it, as my argy was not actually all that great. Even though I did invest all these points into him, his base stats were not amazing. They were decent at best, so I figured it would be good to go through and get as many of these archers as I can, so I could create the ultimate argy once I can go through and start breeding them up. So I took out his buddy, and then I went down to the trees that were nearby, and I started chopping down those so I can go through and build a trap for him. And then I literally jumped up from being scared. I swear the AI, I call it dumb sometimes because I really feel like it is. But then there's other times like this where I feel like it's extremely smart. This Ceratosaurus was not running at me. He wasn't roaring. He made a small little grunting sound as he slowly stalked up to me from around the corner. And that was just extremely terrifying. I did not appreciate that whatsoever. That was not a fun time. But I did manage to go through and get the wood I need. And then I got the trap all set up as well. Then, once I had the trap all set up, I went through and tried to look for the argy. He wasn't too far away, managed to get a really nice shot off on him while he was flying away, and I got him to come on back towards us. But as soon as I was able to get him close to the trap, just as I thought things were about to go well, I got randomly attacked by a saber, and he threw the whole thing off. So I had to go through and deal with the saber first, and then of course that meant he missed the trap, so it was a weird little predicament. So since he was aggroed on my argy and myself already, and we had already passed the trap, I figured at this point in time there was no real point to try and go back to the trap, as my argy could not actually fit through it. So I figured I would just let my argy face tank all the shots, because he had quite a bit of health, and knocking him out shouldn't have taken too long. And sure enough, after just a couple of moments, he was already torpor running. Now the only problem was he was flying far, and he was flying high, so we did have to go through and try and track him down. But unfortunately, as I was trying to go through and actually follow him to be able to try and bait him closer to the ground to track him down, he was torpor running, so he would not aggro onto me. I actually got aggroed on by another argy, so I had to go through and deal with him first. And this was kind of a cool scenic little fight just there above everything else on the island with the moon in the background. And of course I do win the fight as he is weak, and yeah, my argy is like the Captain America of argies right now. He is a buffed up soldier. Now at this point in time I actually was not able to find the argy whatsoever, as it took quite a while to kill the other argy, as flying creatures can kind of be a pain to deal with, as you have to go through and spin in circles a whole bunch to be able to take them out. So yeah, I kind of lost him through getting just discombobulated through that fight. But I did go through and find a Rex on the bottom, so I figured I would just go through and take him out, as I did want to go through and start working towards being able to try and to get some of the creature trophies, as I figured I was going to have quite a few of them to do the alpha fight anyway, so it did not hurt to go through and start stocking up on these now, as it was going to be quite a grind to go through and try and acquire them all later, all at once. Then, as I continued my rampage here on this island, I did go through and run into another level 140 argy, so of course you know what happened. Basically I went through and I baited him over to one of the traps, or essentially over to the the safe island, so I didn't have a repeat of what happened last time. And once I was able to go through and get him over there, and he was fully trapped, knocking him out was actually pretty straightforward and easy, and fortunately this time, there was no issues whatsoever and no complications. Everything went exactly as planned. I did not get arked, so that was awesome. Then while he continued taming up, I figured I'd go through and continue my rampage here on this island, basically going through and continuing just cycling these spawns to try and get some higher level creatures, and essentially harvesting the loot drops to see if I could get anything good. And then a crazy thing happened. Another high level argy I stumbled upon. It was a level 135, which I was not complaining about. In my books, anything that's 135, 140, 145, or 150 is worth the tame. Now, with the other argy already being tamed up in the trap, and I was quite a far away from the other trap as well, I figured the easiest thing to do here would just be to face tank him. So between me and my argy, we basically just kept swapping aggro. I was able to go through and essentially just knock him out with these, or basically close to getting the knockout to where he was torpor running, and then once he did go through and start torpor running, thankfully he did go through and fall down somewhere actually on the island, but of course I did have to go through and ensure that he was protected. So I went around and I started building some spike traps to ensure that he was fully enclosed, so nothing was going to go through and be able to kill him or attack him while he actually tamed up, because I did not want to have all of this effort be completely wasted. Then I went through and I made my way back over to the level 140 RG, and at this time I had plenty of prime meat, so I went through and I put some prime meat in his inventory to start the actual taming process. Now he still was just a little bit away from the last feeding being able to take place, so I went across the island here as there's actually a Rex getting really close to our safe island, so I figured I'd go through and take him and all of his little buddies out, because I just wanted to ensure that the RG tamed up without any issues, and we didn't have any concerns whatsoever, and this island continued to remain safe. Then I decided I was going to head towards the back part of the island here, as I noticed there was a drop here on the back, but there was also an Alpha Rex, so I needed to go through and be extremely careful, as I had not encountered an Alpha Rex yet, and I had no idea if I was going to be capable of actually taking it out. But in my opinion, I do think Alpha Rexes actually are easier to fight on an RG than Alpha Carnos, as they are extremely slow and have a very wide turn radius, so usually you can actually abuse that by just staying directly behind them and attacking their tail, and usually they can actually inflict very little damage. Even if you did not have a super soldier RG, fighting an Alpha Rex should not actually be too big of an issue. It's usually the minions you have to worry about, and as you can see, they were actually giving me quite a bit of grief, so I was actually unable to go through and fight this Rex, at least while these guys were alive, so essentially I did have to go through and run away, and then I basically started goading them away from the Rex. I could go through and take each one of them out one by one, and after slowly but surely I was able to go through and accomplish that, and then it was a 1v1 against the Alpha Rex. Now, you do go through and see the cut here in this video, as I'd actually paused the game right before I had faced the Rex, or as I had faced the Rex, to go into photo mode, and I spent about 30 minutes in there taking like multiple different angles, messing with the lighting, and trying to create the very best thumbnail that I could think of, which is hopefully why you guys clicked on this video. This is the image I'm referring to here. But as you can see, there was a whole bunch of different ones I actually ended up taking. And then I proceeded to fight this big guy, and essentially all you need to do to kill a Rex as an RG is just stick to his tail. No matter how weak your RG is, you will have noticed I have not lost, I don't think, any health whatsoever. You basically just hit his butt right around his tail, and you continue to move fast enough to avoid his bite, and he basically can only attack in a cone facing forward. And the only problem you may run into is if your RG is a little weaker, you may not have enough stam to continue to go through and to do this, so you might have to land once or twice and then rinse and repeat the cycle. But if there are no other creatures around, it is almost guaranteed that you can kill any Alpha Rex with your RG with enough time and patience. Obviously, the more damage you have, the faster it'll be, and the more stam you have, the longer you can go through and continue each cycle. But yeah, you literally just rinse and repeat this, and it's significantly easier than the carnos who attack up and down, because the Rex will literally spin there in a circle. And the reason this works, and you know this works, is because you can watch wild creatures, like Dimorphodons, go through and kill Rexes, because it's the exact same concept. They spin in a circle, and if you are fast enough, they cannot actually go through and hit you. I would say this probably does not work with PTs or tape jars. You could certainly do it, but they definitely do significantly less damage, and I'm not quite sure how their hitbox works, and there you see it. The big bad boy got taken out. Now again, he was only level 15, and it took me roughly 1 minute and 40 seconds to go through and to kill him. And now at this point, we actually had one of each of the alpha trophies for the creatures on land. We had one, or plenty, way more than one. We probably have like 10 Alpha Raptor Talons. I think we have 1 or 2 Alpha Carno arms. And we've killed our first Alpha Rex. We have the Alpha Rex head, which we can go through and mount in our base for some pretty cool decor. Just showing off the accomplishments we've done so far in the playthrough. And of course, we got the teeth as well, which we'll need to actually go through and fight the Alpha Overseer. And at this point in time, I realized my RG was probably really close to taming up. So I went through and started to make my way back. And I basically just killed everything along the way because I knew I could. And I figured my RG would appreciate just getting that last little bit of extra health. health, so he didn't still feel like he had a gap missing in his wing. And I went back and our argy was finally tamed. I then went through and I compared these stats for our new argy with the original one that we had tamed, we'd actually used to go through and to breed our current argy, and it actually had over 100 more health, 100 more stam, and a decent amount more weight. The only stat that was better on our previous argy was the melee stat, so I know I definitely wanted to go through and bring this back and include this in the breeding line for any of our argies going forward, as it had a whole bunch of extra stats. I was pretty excited about this find. I then went through and I proceeded to go through with what I originally came to this island in the previous episode for, and I essentially went through and I murdered all of the different creatures looking for chitin. So specifically at this point, I was actually targeting the ceratosauruses and the scorpions, as I was going to go through and need some chitin, as I still had been unlucky in finding a whole bunch of cementing paste. So I was hoping this would at least get me by through my next project. So I went through and I basically killed any and every single one that I found, and without having an alpha boost, these guys were actually not nearly as difficult to deal with. Even with a mate boost, they were not much of a struggle. They just really hurt when an alpha was boosting them because of their healing factor and their debuff factor, and the fact that I take damage back when I actually hit them. None of those things are great, but the RG heals was actually able to go through and power through all of them without too much issue whatsoever. I then went through and I returned back to my level 135 RG, thinking that enough time had probably passed where I could go through and actually feed this guy, and I should be able to tame him up without any issues. And fortunately, these spike traps seemed to have done what their actual job was, which meant it probably had stayed safe, and it did not appear to have taken any damage. So I was pretty excited about that. But then I did go through and look up on the hilltop, and there was a level 5 Alpha Carno who was patrolling the area and getting awfully close here. Now, transparently, I probably should have killed him first, but I was actually feeling pretty confident after that Rex kill, so I basically just ignored him, and I continued to go through and defeat my RG. And fortunately for me, he tamed up without any issue whatsoever. Now, at this point, now that I had this RG in a cryopod, and I had picked up all my spike traps, I still wanted revenge, and the fact that this guy was only level 5 and there was not a single other enemy in sight, I figured I could go through and actually take this guy out without too many issues whatsoever, and he apparently just realized that he was going to die because he wasn't spending too much effort actually trying to fight me, nor was he doing all that much. And again, being level 5, I really didn't think he posed that much of a threat, especially since I had managed to take down a much higher level 1 earlier on. He did go through and actually get a buddy to go through and help him, but he literally did not last that long whatsoever. I think it was less than a minute. That is not a great time to last. Anyways, moving on. So I went to go through and check my inventory to see what I got from the Alpha Carno, but I did realize there was actually one more enemy who was pretty close by, and most likely he would go through and disturb me while I was looking at all my new loot, so I went through and I took him out really quickly, got my RG a nice little quick snack to go, and then I checked out all the loot I got from that level 5 Alpha Carno, and for being level 5, he gave me some pretty darn good stuff, a 200 plus crossbow. I was pretty excited about that. And then of course I got the alpha trophy for killing him as well, so I was pretty happy with the progress and all the loot we've actually obtained from all these alphas here on Carno Island. Now shortly thereafter killing that level 5, I had actually found a level 10 Alpha Carno with just a couple of buddies nearby, so I went through and dispatched his lower level minions first. And then I went through and I prioritized him, and again, being level 10, I did not think he would be too much of a threat, and with me being, fully souped up and Superman, I figured this should not be an issue whatsoever. So my RG went through and put in some work, and he was taking some damage because that bleed effect does slow you down, and it is kind of a pain, so it's hard to avoid the attacks on the Carno for sure. And I could definitely tell if this guy was too much higher level, he would have given me some trouble, some difficulty, just because of the fact that bleed really does hurt. But overall, yeah, the fight went pretty well. I will say that the loot here was not amazing, but I did get a better axe. At this time, I'd been using a primitive metal axe for the entire duration, so I was glad I got that. But once I got through and I equipped that in my inventory, I then went through and I headed back to my base to start organizing my stuff, because I basically feel like I had accomplished my mission there on the island, and I had a plethora of stuff, and my RG was actually getting quite heavy with all of the great stuff we had found. Now, I told you we had gone to Carno Island to actually get the cementing paste, or the chitin and the keratin needed for the cementing paste, but I still needed rocks or stones, and honestly, at this time, I could either use my axe, or the next best bet was to actually go through and use our Enki, or aka Mustard. So I took him down to the beach, and we went through and slapped a couple of rocks, figured we could use the flint and some stones to make some spark powder with whatever stone was left over after we combined that with the keratin and the chitin for some cementing paste. We went through and basically just demolished every single thing we could find on the beach until he could not walk anymore. And of course, I did go through and transfer the stone over to the RG, as the RG actually has the weight reduction on it and the Enki does not. Now, when I got back to the base, I went through and I started combining everything, and I realized I was actually only able to make just under 40 cementing paste with all of the stone and the keratin that I had, which was actually a bit disappointing for the amount of time that I had actually invested in this, so I definitely knew that I was going to have to find a beaver dam in the near future, even if it meant that I was going to have to travel quite far inland to be able to make make that happen, otherwise my progression was certainly going to get halted if I could not find more of the cementing paste. I also went through and continued to allow my argies to breed, that way eventually I could build myself a better, stronger argy, and I would have a backup in case something bad did happen to this one, and I'd also go through and have a bunch of extra eggs I could go through and make kibble in the near future once I had acquired everything that I would actually need to be able to do so. And then once I finished all my chores back at the base, I realized I needed some cementing paste, so I sent out on another adventure, and I figured I would return to the oasis one last time in the hopes that somehow the Ark gods would bless me, and somehow they heard me, because there, right there in the middle, like completely obvious and possible to miss, was a giant beaver dam. So I was pretty thankful for that. I was just hoping that it actually paid off and gave me quite a bit, but the moment I hopped off my RG, I actually got attacked right away. Some decided it was going to try and stop me. The game did not want me to get this beaver dam, but after everything was cleared, I went through and I hopped off, and I realized it actually had just over a stack, so I was okay with that. It was better than nothing, and consider that I only got just under 40 from all that other work, a full stack I was not going to complain about. But I figured that was not enough, as I was going to need a significantly more amount to go through and craft all of the electronics that I wanted, like the chemistry bench and the industrial cooker, so that I can make production on things like kibble significantly easier in the future. So after that, I said I was going to go through and head further inland. I had made my way up a little bit into the river here, and I had not found any beaver dams so far, but I did go through and spot another Alpha Raptor. Now at this point, I actually had plenty of Alpha Raptor tribute, so I definitely did not need another one. But whenever I do see an alpha and I feel like I have the ability to go through and kill it, I just go through and prioritize it, because it's actually going to be experience for both my mount and for me, and I was really focusing on trying to reach max level. I believe around this time I was actually just around level 100, and I was also hoping they gave me some decent loot as well, and I don't really feel like raptors pose all that much of a threat to you when you are actually on your RG, as long as they don't have a bunch of extra friends, because you can actually knock them back quite easily, and basically just nullifies the majority of their damage, and I actually win the fight without too many problems whatsoever. So then I looked for the nearest rocks I could actually go through and take a look at the loot that the raptor had actually given me, and honestly it wasn't all that great, but I was just pretty happy that we got the experience from it. And I was going to go through and continue my mission to look for more cementing paste, and I got attacked by another Alpha Raptor. I swear, alphas on the island are insane. There is just an insane amount of them. And then you go to places like Scorched Earth, or even the center, and you do not find even close to as many as you typically would here on the island, which I think is hilarious because you have Explorer nodes and Alpha, so it just makes experience on the island probably the easiest way to level up. I think it's easier to level up on the island than it is the center due to the experience note plus the Alpha experience boost and bonus. So I went through and I continued my search, and actually halfway down the river, just towards the end of actually entering into the swamp-like area, I did go through and find some raptors guarding another beaver dam. So I was pretty happy about that, and I decided I was going to go through and hop off and get myself some nice cementing paste, as I would certainly need so much of this, probably 6, 7, or 8 stacks of it in the future, and crafting it apparently was not the way to go. I do not recommend it. It is basically a waste of time if you could find these huge bunch of dams with all of this different stuff in it. And then I didn't feel like I actually needed the wood at this point, so I just left it behind, as I certainly did not want to take forever to have to get back to my base. And then I went through and I saw that I was about to get attacked by a Rex, so I figured I'd go through and deal with him, and our angry resident of the beaver was actually mad because I had tore apart his home, and the only thing that he knew was basically destroyed right before he was going to get mauled and ate by the Stratosaurus and this Rex. So yeah, he basically got his life spared, but his home and everything in his life was completely destroyed. And I was going to go through and about to leave, and then I realized that, I'm just going to do this guy a favor, and I was going to relocate him, and then I spotted another beaver dam. So I was pretty happy that I found 2 in one place. I just let that guy be and realized that he may come after me, but at this point, I didn't think he posed too much of a threat. And there's a good chunk of rare flowers in there, and there's also not too much cementing paste, but I was actually pretty happy with the rare flowers, as I was going to be needing that for some of the kibble that I was going to be building in the near future. Now, I felt like I'd accomplished what I had set out to do to go through and find some cementing paste, so I started to make my way home, but then I stopped at the oasis just on the off chance there was another beaver dam. And sure enough, there actually was, just slightly farther away from where the last one was, and this one was loaded. There was over basically 200 cementing paste here, a good stack of rare mushrooms, and then a plethora of wood. So I went through and I basically just took everything out of that dam, collapsed all the wood, because I was getting completely destroyed. These beavers were pissed that I came back and raided their house, and they basically did not feel like I was going to do this again, because, I was actually kind of scared. They got me down to half health, and I called my bird over, and I did not have any bolas to go through and stop this. I was actually kind of terrified that I was going to die. But fortunately, my RG did make it to me in time, and I got the heck out of there, and I will certainly have to be a bit more careful when I go through and destroy somebody's home in the near future. And then I made it back to the base, and I went to continue to go through and basically keep the breeding up and hatching the eggs, hoping I could get myself a better RG, and basically start working on the mutations as well, because I spend so much time on the RG, And its colors are just kind of ugly. I want it to at least look pretty if I'm going to spend a lot of time on it. And on that note, and to go through and save you from the disaster of having to murder children, I think that is where we will conclude our journey today. Alright guys, well I hope you did enjoy today's video, and if you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you're not already.